Hey everybody, Mike here from Mike's Computer Tips. Today I'm going to start talking about hardware tips. Then we're going to go to software tips. Then we're going to go to maintenance tips. Then we'll do upgrade tips. And we'll do safety tips. This is going to be a complete series of 5 different categories of tips. So make sure you stay till the end and watch all the tips, and you'll gain a lot of knowledge and you'll be able to do a lot of things yourself. So let's start right away with hardware tips. Okay, on hardware, on your computer you have a hard drive, and there's a couple different types of hard drives, but we're going to talk about the latest model, which is SSD hard drive, and that's the fastest one right now. And there's a couple other faster ones, but if you're doing regular computer use, then you would be getting knowledge with SSD hard drives. In 2023, that is the basic hard drive that all computers are coming with, and they're much faster than the regular ones. So SSD hard drive is a hard drive that doesn't have any moving parts in it. It's built on the same technology as the USB pen drives. You know, the ones that you plug into the USB and save your information. Except you can save a lot more information because it has a lot more, you can put a lot more stuff on it. So you can get them from 128 to 256 all the way up until probably one terabyte or even 2 terabytes. Depends how much you want to spend. If you're not going to do too much saving data and you're going to save it with a USB hard drive or an external hard drive, then 128, 256, or even a 500 gigabyte is enough for your needs. The Windows operating system goes on it, your applications go on it, and all your files go on it. And it will start your computer faster, and you'll see it running a lot faster when you're doing things. SSD hard drive. Now, memory is another area of your computer that is hardware related, and we're going to talk about if you add more memory to your computer is going to run faster also. So between the hard drive and the memory, you're going to have a much faster computer. Now, you could do either or, but I would recommend personally, if you're going to do any upgrade, you do the SSD hard drive. But if you want to do gaming or video editing, I would say to add more memory. And memory is not very expensive. You can get an 8 gig stick for about $25. So what it's called is RAM memory, and it goes into your circuit board, which is called the motherboard of your computer, and it makes your computer faster. Now, every motherboard supports different amount of memory, so it depends on what motherboard you have. It determines whether, how much memory you could add. If you have 4 gigs, most likely you can go to 8 gigs, and sometimes you can go to 16 gigs. If you have a better motherboard in your computer, sometimes you can go to 32 gigs. You have to check online, or when you call the memory company, ask them how much your computer will take. If it's a regular off-the-shelf computer, you just give the model number and they'll tell you your computer will take 16 gigs or whatever. And if you have 8 in there, you can add another 8 and it will be much faster. Now, getting into video cards, which is also called GPU. If someone says GPU, that means graphics card. Now, graphics cards are mainly for gaming and video editing. So if you're planning on doing gaming or video editing, and you want to upgrade your computer, if your computer doesn't have a high-end graphics card and it's a desktop, then you can add it to your computer. And they go anywhere from 1 gig, 2 gigs to 8 gigs, and so on. If you're going to do gaming, you're going to need at least a 4 or 8 gig video card, depending on the types of games that you're going to play. For video editing, 4 gig is probably the minimum. So if you want a 4 gig or an 8 gig, you're in that range there. And there's a couple different kinds. NVIDIA is a company that makes video cards. AMD also makes video cards. You have to find one in your price range. I would say the best bet is an AMD or an NVIDIA card, which is 4 gigs or 8, and make sure you have the PCI Express slot in your computer on your motherboard. And what that is that's where the video card will be plugged into. So you'll need that longer brown slot. Most of the time it's brown, and it's on your motherboard, and that's where it fits in. So if you're going to upgrade your computer with a video card, a graphics card, or a GPU, which is all the same thing, then you have to have that slot. What it is a dedicated slot, so it doesn't interfere with memory or anything else on the motherboard. It's its own dedicated slot, and that's where you'd be plugging in your HDMI cable in the back and to your monitor to get better video once you install that. There's a lot of different price range, so you really have to do your shopping, but prices have gone down a lot in video cards. Next is processor. Now, the processor, what is that? It's also known as the CPU of your computer, and it's the brains of your computer, and it is the little square block that's underneath your fan, your CPU fan, and that is where all the information is. Baby, do it right, do it right. We can go all night, we can move back, rewind. When you put your body on mine and collide, it could be one of those nights, but we don't turn on. The second part of this is going to be about the CPU. Now, the CPU is Central Processing Unit, and that is the brains of the computer, and that dictates everything that's going on the computer. It sends information from the CPU to the RAM, from the RAM to the video card, from the hard drive, and back and forth. So that's probably the most important component on the computer. Also, but other than that, all the other components are important to make the computer work. So like I was saying, there is 2 types and 2 companies that make CPUs. One is AMD and one is Intel. And their technology is pretty much the same, whether you get AMD or whether you get Intel processor. Now, there are some additional things that AMD is doing on the gaming aspect. So if you're going to build or upgrade your AMD computer, then you're going to be staying with an AMD chip. So AMD is doing a little bit more on the gaming side. If you're building from scratch, I would probably recommend AMD, only because they are more into the gaming. So they have a little bit more, capacity, and technology is just a little bit different for gaming, and all their parts are high performance. And that's not taking anything away from Intel. They have great products too, and great CPUs. Next, we're going to talk about the power supply, which is usually on a desktop in the back, on the bottom, or on the top of the desktop. And there's several different wattage for different power supplies. Now on a laptop, you have it outside the computer because obviously that's the best way to do it. So they have it on the outside. But on a desktop, you have a lot of options on your power supply. I think they start at 250 watts on very low end systems, and they go all the way up to like 1,000 watt power supply. So if you're going to have a lot of added things in your computer, added fans, high-end video cards, and high-end memory and all this stuff in your computer, then you're going to want at least a 650 to an 800 watt power supply. That's about the adequate. If you're going to go real high end, which high end gaming system, you can go anywhere from 600 all the way up to 1,000. I think 800 is enough for really anything. 800 watt. That should be enough for anything that you're going to do on the computer. And a lot of different companies make power supplies. So, do your research and look into the specs of the power supply. We're going to move on to the software. Software tips, which will include the operating system, Windows 10, mostly is what we're going to be talking about, and different things that you can do in Windows 10 to make your computer run better and also make it run better, but also have knowledge of doing maintenance to it. But maintenance will be a separate thing. So basically, we're going to be talking about Windows 10 software and programs, and also applications and third-party programs. If you have a computer, basically you have a Windows 10 or a Windows 11 operating system. If you have a Windows 7, you have an older operating system you need to upgrade if you want to stay current on the internet. Windows 11 is a little better than Windows 10 because it has extra features. Windows 10 is just fine. Microsoft is still doing updates for that, and I don't know when they're going to phase that out, but it looks like for a while Windows 10 is going to be around. It's not going anywhere for a while. A lot of people have it, so they're still going to be using it. And one thing about Windows 10 or 11, I have to say that there is a lot of things that you can turn off in the operating system that will make your computer run faster and run better in the software aspect. Because when you buy a computer or install a regular operating system from scratch, just putting a new Windows version on your computer, you're going to have by default, a lot of settings that are set to the way that Microsoft wants it set to, and it's not necessarily set for, high power or things like that. It's set for more convenience for Microsoft, and a lot of this stuff will slow your computer down. So there's a lot of personal things in Windows that you can change, turn off mostly. And one thing is bloatware, which is bloatware is another name for having a lot of programs on your computer that you really don't need or ever going to use. And you can go through your computer and you can remove programs that are just things that you'll never use and take them off, and your computer will run better. Which is a good thing, because not everybody wants to have all these things running, which will essentially give you more, everything is going to be working, but a lot of those things that are working will use your Windows resources. So the less resources that you use in Windows, the better your computer is going to run, essentially. So that is something that you have to go through one at a time. If you have any questions about the things you could turn off and what to do, you can always leave in the comments, and I will get back to you and tell you what is some things that you can do. It's just too much stuff to list. And even on Windows 11, there is even more things to list. Now, safety tips is something that I want to touch on, and I will touch on that in the next video segment of this series, and that is computer safety. And then after that, we're going to go into like maintenance, things like that, things you can do to maintain your computer better.